don't have all these rocks. These were moved in here by a glacier a mile thick of ice would have been above our heads about 15,000 years ago. The last glacier to move through this area, as it receded and melted, the bottom of a glacier is almost like sandpaper. It's carrying a tremendous amount of debris that it's caught onto along the way, and then that debris gets deposited as that glacier recedes. So that's what all these rocks are, the smaller ones, and that bouncing one on top. I suspect this is probably part of the bedrock. I mean, you can actually see the way the lines are coming out. This is gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S, it's a metamorphic rock. It's very hard, so that's actually what the bedrock is. But the scattered rocks around, which are called glacial erratics, these were left here by the glacier. I haven't seen a good sample of pudding stone. Well, there's one over there. The purple rock with the white spots on it. Okay, that is not the bedrock here. That's the bedrock in the very northern part of New Jersey and the southern part of New York State. So every time you see that rock, that was dragged here by the glacier. It's also called green pond conglomerate. My understanding is that it's called pudding stone because of its resemblance to colonial plum pudding, which I guess was a lot of plums and big old pieces of lard in a bag. Sounds tasty.
This has been a long journey. I did give a little talk at the Historic Society, so I won't do the history because I make it up. But this journey started in 1986, and actually took 13 years to complete Jonathan's Woods, the 450 acres of Jonathan's Woods. Jonathan's Woods now includes the hog pen, and I think that took another 8 years for us, and a willing seller. Thank you, Mr. Kern. And that's why we have this wonderful park that's now over 600 acres. We added property this year, three lots this year. Small lots, but they're all surrounding, so we keep enlarging this park. It makes a whole lot of sense. You're going to have open space. The bigger, the easier to manage. And how far are we from Route 80 here? Or Newark Airport. I mean, this is like
a little bit.
So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce. Let me introduce Joan. Joan will talk a little bit about POW. And then we can go to our history, and we'll end with our history.
I just wanted to let everybody know that POW's been at this for 23 years. And this year is the most positive, most exciting year so far. We've been dealing with about $1 million of grant money, and we have several projects that we're doing. Most of that grant money is going for acquisition of 13 acres in Denville, and we are slowly getting there, but we anticipate a closing in maybe 2010, early on, so we're very excited to add 13 forested wetland acres to this park. The remaining grant money that we are using is going toward forest stewardship, and you came up a trail today that was blazed in green with a white dot. Jim Florence, who's been head of the
you can see the green with the white dot. The green didn't work out.
I can see there's a red one over here. So he has managed to actually blaze 5 main trails this year. Plus, they have spent hundreds of hours out maintaining and repairing trails. And part of that trail grant has allowed the Park Commission to come in and install 5 trailhead gates and kiosks. But today, I would like to acknowledge another partner whose name always appears on the application, but has never been named as a partner, and that is Jonathan, after which the park is named. This being Halloween brings to mind spirits, and those of us in POW have agreed that we wanted to acknowledge his presence because there have been so many times when preservation seemed impossible in the 23 years that we've been doing this. There has been, at the 11th hour, all of a sudden, landowners honored the concept of open space over development. When politicians have changed their minds, and we know that the spirit of Jonathan seems to intercede when we need him the most.
He was up there watching us not too long ago.
Yeah, well, no, I think that was
fuzzy,
fair.
but he was there.
But we are grateful for the spirit of Jonathan and his wife that seems to intercede whenever we need it.
introduce Dick Seabury. Dick has been on the Park Commission for about close to 30 years, if not more. He is head of the Land Committee. He's a past president of the Park Commission, and probably one of the most knowledgeable in the historic area. So, with Dick.
Thank you for coming. It's a good day. It may not perfect, but thank you. 12,000 years ago, visualize several hundred feet of ice above us, grinding these two grooves out on the other side and on this side. I think most of you saw the other side there. And then prehistoric man, I'm sure, enjoyed the spot. I mean, there's been fires here for centuries. This is a logical spot, a shelter. Comes the American Revolution and the Forage Wars, as they called them. George Washington had to go around to the various houses and homesteads and say, you got 6 cows, you're going to keep 3 for the winter and we're taking 3. So the local settlers were, they were supportive, but they did not want to lose all their cattle and so forth. So this was the spot they hid the cattle, the hogs. There's an old wall up there you can see, they fenced it off, and I'm sure they had a shelter here. Then, of course, I think it was 1780, the British and the Hessians down in Perth Amboy, Connecticut Farms, and that area in Union County decided to push through. And as John Cunningham in his recent book talks about the protection of Morris County of those ridges out there, they had to go through Springfield Gap. You know it as Short Hills Mall. But, there was a narrow gap, and the word went out. And I think Washington had written a letter a few weeks before complaining about the local militia. And you can see their headstones up there in the cemetery in Rockaway Borough, and led by General Winds. The word went out, the militia got on their horses, they brought their teenage boys, their own rifles. The wives came up here, and this is where the wives and the daughters, the children hid. They brought their livestock, they had shelter, and it must have been, imagine that night, the women coming here and the men riding off to defend this area at the Gap, Springfield Gap. Well, the British tried to get up, and up in the rocks and so forth, they were defeated. They turned and went back. They reassembled. They tried a second time, and the local militia, I think George Washington sent about 1,200 of his crack troops down from, he had about 2,500 men around Washington's headquarters protecting the powder mill and so forth there. And we won. And so the men came back, and losses were light, and their families were waiting for them. But that must have been a night, and they also had the bonfires burning on the hills from, I guess, West Point all the way down into Chatham. They had fires, big fires.
Beacon Hill, you heard of Beacon Hill in Denville, you Denville people? That was one of the fire cones.
I mean, the specs were, I think, 18 by 18 by 26 feet high timbers with brush inside, so it was quite a fire. And so that's the American Revolution, and we all think of Washington as headquarters, but this is part of the American Revolution. This is part for the local people.
Anyway, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of both
Thank
town
you.
and the Park Commission. It was a fun day, little obstacle here and there, but you're all troopers.